SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. For many people, the work they do plays a big role in defining who they are. So when it comes to retirement, they can feel a sense of loss, a need to redefine themselves. Ros Handley wants to change the way we think about retirement because it's not about losing anything, but rather gaining a completely new perspective. Ros is known as the exec retirement coach, and she helps people discover what they really want from life beyond their current business or career. Aside from financial considerations, she tells Chris Ashmore that planning for retirement involves two aspects.
First, preparing to take charge of the changes associated with retirement, and second, identifying how they want their life to be. So the experience of retirement will be very different for everyone, but it's recognised as a significant life stage. And quite often people don't realise what a significant change it can be. And just to give you a couple of examples, for the business owner, how they see their place in the world if they're no longer running their business is going to be a huge change. And they'll likely find that no one's coming to them for a decision anymore. Suddenly they're not leading a company now. And even if they choose to stay involved with the business in some way, they'll see someone else now driving the business and potentially making changes. And that can be tough, especially when the business owner has invested so much of themselves, their time and energy, into the business over many years or decades. It can feel challenging to let it go, and it's one thing to think about letting the business go, but it's something else to actually feel it. And that can create a sense of loss for people. It may feel like the end of an era. So the challenge is to consider what's next for you. What will get you out of bed in the morning in 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years after retiring? Another big change can relate to who you're spending your time with once you retire. So it may be that your business networks are quite different. Your relationship with those people are quite different now. And you may be spending more time than ever with your spouse. It may be that you and your spouse are both in the business, but you may each have different ideas for how you want to spend your time once you've retired. So it's important to discuss that and plan for it rather than just waiting and seeing what happens. And another aspect may be the dream of moving house and possibly downsizing. So if you're planning to do that at the same time as you're leaving your work role, that's a lot of change to deal with all at once. So again, just thinking about that in advance and planning for it's really important.
You talked a lot about the different factors to consider when retiring, but what do you think makes a good retirement?
The thing to consider is when you look back on your life at some future stage, how do you want to feel about it? And what would a fulfilling life look like for you? So let's start with thinking just about the 5 years after you retire. In 5 years, how do you want your life to be and how do you want to feel about yourself? Now, we can't control every aspect of life and the finances are an important factor, but it's important to have a vision or a goal for how you want to be living your life and how you want to feel about life. So I speak a lot about feelings, and listeners may think that sounds a bit fluffy, but it's a reality. It's a reality that people don't talk about much. So when you have a bunch of mixed feelings, it can feel like you're the only one who feels this way. But let me assure you, this is a common experience, that people feel the excitement of retiring, but they also feel a sense of loss. They feel like it's the end of an era, but actually it's also an opportunity to establish a new beginning and a new stage of your life. So I often encourage people to think about time. And of course, none of us know how much time we'll have in this lifetime, which is pretty frustrating and very hard to plan financially for that. But if you were given a serious health diagnosis in 5 years, 10 years or 20 years' time, you'd soon realise that how you've spent your time is the most important thing. And so you want to make the most of it and spend your time in a way that is meaningful to you.
Has retirement changed significantly than the past?
Yeah, it has. So retirement today is very different to the experience of past generations, and primarily because we're living longer. And we have different expectations. So, for example, these days we generally expect to travel, not to the nearest beach or to the countryside, but to other parts of the world. And we often expect to do that regularly, for as long as possible. We also have more options for how we spend our time, and the baby boomers are really breaking new ground in that respect. They are likely to be more active, they're likely to travel, and they may create a new business, one that's more suited to the lifestyle they want to live now. And so we have a magnificent opportunity to create our own path forward. And that really wasn't the done thing for past generations, and often they didn't have many years ahead to create a new stage of their life.
For those listening to this who may be close to retirement, how do you suggest, in a practical sense, that they can plan for their retirement?
Yeah, so it's about investing the time to think about what you want for the next 5, 10, 20 years or more. Our mindset is really important. For example, we often think about retiring as an ending, the end of an era, the end of life as we know it. But if we potentially have 20 or more years ahead of us, why wouldn't we see this as an opportunity to start something new? I actually prefer to replace the term retirement with renewal, reset, reinvention, whatever you like. It's about creating a future that you want to move towards. And people often associate retirement with ageing, but ageing is really just the meaning that we, society, give to it. We've been ageing, changing all of our lives, but we get to this point and suddenly we think, I feel like, I'm getting old. Well, that doesn't have to be the way that we view ourselves. And, we may be physically changing in some ways as time goes by, but we're also far more experienced, we're far wiser, and we're far more interesting than we were in the past. So I encourage people to focus on those aspects when they're thinking about what they want for the future. And I encourage people to focus on the future rather than the past. So as you retire, there's the opportunity to really celebrate everything you've achieved so far. But you can't stay stuck in that place. You have to be looking to the future and how you want to move forward with your life.
You touched upon it, and retirement these days is a lot longer, 20 or 30 years, depending on cognitive capabilities and physical capabilities. There are different phases to that retirement age, and therefore should we be planning for those different phases of our lives?
Yeah, absolutely. I encourage people to start off with thinking about, the next 5 years, because that's a manageable time frame to try and imagine what you want and how life will be. And as I said before, we can't control everything that happens in life, so we do need to be willing to change our direction if required. But there was a great article in the Australian newspaper a couple of months ago, and it was about longevity and the shifting stages of the life cycle. So the article suggested that those who are aged 55 to 70 now are in a lifestyle stage, and those aged 70 to 80 are considered to be retired. They've sort of wound down a bit more, and those over 80 are considered older people. Whereas for past generations, 60 or 65 was considered older, and people sometimes didn't live beyond 69. So it's a very different situation now. And in that article, the social commentator Bernard Salt was quoted as saying, "Changing life expectancy is gifting additional years, if not decades, to Australians and others. And we don't seem to be entirely comfortable with how to manage all that extra time." I think that's a great quote. And as I said, I'd encourage people to focus on, 5 years from now, and then, you can have a 5-year rolling vision for how you want to progress and how you manage change along the way.
There's a lot to think about, but before we go, any final thoughts, Ros?
Be careful about making assumptions about what your spouse is going to want or how much time you'll be spending with your grandchildren. You need to talk to your wife or your husband, and you need to talk to the parents of your grandchildren as you plan, so that there are no unwelcome surprises in that respect, because not everyone's expectations are the same. And the second point is that I just encourage people to make the most of their time. It doesn't need to be an elaborate lifestyle, but it needs to be spending time in the ways that are meaningful to you, so that in the future, at some future stage, when you look back on your life and you look at this stage of your life, you can feel a great sense of satisfaction.
That was retirement coach Ros Handley. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow at BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast.
SoundCartel.